Hello and welcome to our next video. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and create our first repository at GitHub. So when we do this, we're going to create our first remote repository, which means that it's going to be stored somewhere else, not on our local machine. And so our remote repositories, if we're using GitHub, are going to be stored at github.com. Now, I just signed up for an account, so I need to verify my email address. And I would notice that as I go to create my first repo. So I'm going to do that here. And just so you know, in case you didn't figure this out already, if I say repo, it usually means I'm referring to a repository. And I can create a new repo by starting a new project here, or by clicking up here on the plus symbol and selecting new repository. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it says, of course, I need to verify my email address since I just signed up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And I'll pause the video. You should do that as well in case you needed to do this. All right, so I have verified my email. I'm going to go ahead and hit F5. Oh, it's not the page I'm looking for. That's fantastic. So it says I'm unverified. So let's just remove this because I am verified. And look, there I am. So let's go ahead and create our new repository now. And so what you'll note is that you have a drop-down list for the owner of your repo. So since you're probably the only one on your account, it will be you, and that's the way you would want it. And for our repository name, let's just go ahead and call it First Repo. It really doesn't matter what we call it, as long as it's available and makes sense. And so then it says we need to give it a description. This is our first repository. Now, we could make it private, but if we do that, of course, we need to enter our credit card information, or PayPal. I'm going to go ahead and leave it public because I'm not going to spend any money on this first repo. And note that we can do this thing down here where we initialize the repository with a README. So we can go ahead and do that. That just gives a README file. It'll let you do some stuff with taking notes or making notes of what your repo is supposed to do. If you already had an existing repo, it does say to go ahead and skip this step, and that's fine. The other thing we can do is add a .gitignore file, and it's okay if you don't know what that is right now. We don't really need to do that, and so what you would do, let's say you were doing Java, you could say I want to add a java.gitignore, or if you're doing .NET, you would do a Visual Studio gitignore. And so I'm going to go ahead and with the Visual Studio, and you can add a license. And the nice thing about this is it actually tells you what these licenses mean. If you want to know more, you can click on this little info button and it tells you what each of these licenses mean and what would work for you. So I encourage you to read through these and see which one works the best. I'm going to go ahead with the MIT license for mine. And I'm just going to say MIT license here. And I'm going to go ahead and create the repository. And what we'll see is that I now have a repository at Major Guidance Solutions called First Repo. And note that the URL is github.com Major Guidance Solutions /First Repo. Right now there's no code, there's no issues, there's no pull requests, there's no projects, there's a wiki, but there's nothing in it. Settings aren't really set up, and some insights about code and contributions, which of course right now are nothing. But it did add the license, the README, and the gitignore file to my initial commit in my first repo. And that is all we need to do to have a repo set up at GitHub. So that concludes our video on setting up our first repository at GitHub. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.